Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Mead Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and today I am joined by...
Jon.
And Joe.
Hi guys, thank you very much for joining me for yet another episode.
Excited to be here, although it is very warm, so I'm a little sleepy.
It has been a busy week for everybody all round, I think. But we are back again.
Yeah.
We are.
And we are ready to talk some more Warhammer nerdy goodness.
Oh, yeah.
To talk about some tiny, tiny toys.
We are going to talk some tiny, tiny toys. And very specifically, we're obviously going to be looking at something a little bit different this week. We're sort of... It's not quite new rules in terms of game, but it is something that I think might be quite interesting to talk about. So specifically this week we are going to be exploring what makes a truly great narrative campaign in Legions Imperialis and introduce a bold new idea for me for a high stakes war of attrition where every unit matters. From managing limited resources to retreat mechanics and evolving storylines, we'll dive deep into the art of campaign design at the epic scale. And you might be able to tell.
Very well delivered there.
I was going to say, you might tell I delivered that rather well because I have a script for that
bit. I couldn't tell. It was a seamless transition into that bit.
I'm trying to update the way we do things just a little bit.
I know, but you know,
Here's the quality.
It just sounded too high quality. I needed to lower it down a bit more. You know.
Yes, thank you. I've got to get into practice because these are the kind of things I've got to do when I start doing these reports.
Yeah.
Because there will be lots of voice acting. So
yes. Lots of delivery like that. Yeah.
So that is going to be the goal for today. So obviously we're going to go through our usual segments. So Tankard Talk, discussion, and roundtable. So with that being said, we do have some Tankard Talk. Now I will preface the Tankard Talk that I myself have not committed anything to Tankard Talk due to life events that are going on at the moment. The Mead Gaming studio, as you see behind me, which obviously is in my home, is actually being moved at the end of this month because we are moving house, or flat, whichever way you want to put it. So things are going to be changing. Hopefully we'll keep up with the podcasts. Hopefully that won't change. Hopefully it won't clash. But live streams are going to go down and some of my painting time is going to drop dramatically over the next few weeks. So I'll be relying on you two to do some Warhammer.
Oh god. Okay, I'm gonna have to cram and then slowly drip feed it. Be like, I've done all this, and then just like drip feed it in until you're back up to speed.
Yeah.
Model a week.
It's better than nothing.
Maybe I'll dig out some models that I painted and just not sent any pictures to you of.
But you've now said that on camera.
Oh no!
You're supposed to say that off camera.
You won't know which one it is.
Oh well, too late now.
Too late.
I'm not cutting it.
No.
Okay, so with that being said, boys, let us jump over to Tankard Talk. So I'll see you in just a minute.
See you there.
Yeah.
And here we are in the Tankard Talk viewing arena.
Got tankards.
I'm cheating a little bit. I'm using my modern glass tankard.
No, I'm miming. I've got a Pringles can, that'll do.
I mean, I thought I was being modern, but that's taken it another level.
I mean, that's not even a drink at that stage.
But it is recycling.
Yeah, that's true. Is glass not recyclable? You just wash it up and use it again.
So.
It's reusable.
It serves many purposes.
Many purposes.
So, today's Tankard Talk, as we said, is going to be a little bit shorter, maybe. We'll see. I think there might be a bit of a discussion coming at the end, which Jon knows about.
I do.
Have you mentioned to Joe yet?
No.
No? Okay. Right.
I'm so worried.
There are secrets upon secrets from the Alpha Legion player.
Schemes.
Yes. So, without further ramble, let's have a look at what we got. So, what on earth is this?
See this. I am. This is from my even nerdier hobby.
It gets nerdier?
Yeah. So over the weekend, I have attended Empire LARP, the largest live-action role-playing event in the UK, and I had to update my kit. So I've got my little Sororitas-esque purity seal there that I have printed, new and improved, painted, and attached to a big bit of canvas that I wrote some Latin on.
Did you say you painted that as well?
Yeah.
You've done a bloody good job on that.
Yeah, it's a really nice job on that.
That's a really nice job.
Yeah. Really, really simple. Like, literally just a zenithal, well, kind of a weird zenithal, because I wanted to do it brighter in the middle, so I kind of just focused white on the middle and then the black towards the outside, and then just went over it all in red and then picked out the details.
Honestly, that's good enough. I could crop the background out of that and use that as a sticker.
Yeah. that is like genuinely legit. I was like, I didn't know that you'd printed it.
that is brilliant. It's very cool.
Professional.
And
it's the fade. It's the fade that's really nice. What does the Latin say though?
It's a big old oath that I haven't got memorized and don't have the document.
Not much of an oath if you don't remember it.
You've got it written down, just not in a language that you can speak. You know,
it's written there.
It's like that bit in Pirates of the Caribbean. You get credit for trying.
Oh, that's very cool.
So it does actually say something meaningful to the game and to the character. It's not just
it's essentially an oath of like courage to protect and like defend the weak, etc. But in a format that is long enough to put on a big bit of canvas.
I mean, yeah, that's a big old bit of canvas and big old oath, an oath of moment, one might say.
Yeah. And the weathering is all natural.
So it was a clean bit before you went into battle.
Yeah, basically.
Very cool. I can't say I've ever done LARP. It's something I've always been interested in, but I've never taken the plunge.
It's good fun. It's great fun. A great weekend, to be fair. A lot happened, but yeah.
Well, we'll get you there. To be fair, I've not been yet, Jamie, but I'm closer to dropping off into that realm than I think you are. But we'll drag you down with us. Don't you worry.
Well, like I said, I've been tempted for many years. So if I've got a team here that want to introduce me, I'm more than happy to have a go.
Absolutely.
Happily.
I mean, I've got some of the props already.
You're not allowed to actually stab people. They have to be safe.
It's only for show.
No, it's very, 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 very much not allowed.
It's fine. I've got the proper fake ones as well. Don't worry.
Okay,
Good.
okay,
That's fine.
that's it. That's the important.
I've got the polypropylene. It's fine.
No.
It's just plastic.
No.
It's just plastic. It's fine.
No.
Let me guess. It's got to be foam.
It does. It does.
Damn.
Actually, Joe will attest. It definitely needs to be foam if I'm involved in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, 100%. John is proficient at turning foam into an actual bludgeoning weapon.
I found the best way to deal with a spear is just to remove it from the person's hand by blunt force.
That is a genuine tactic, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's not to really go and be quoting another film, but it's that bit in Starship Troopers. You know, the enemy cannot use the weapon if their hand is disabled.
An appropriate segue into a more sci-fi setting.
Ooh, yes.
Speaking of which, what do we have here, John? I know what we have. I know what we have here. It's an orc. It's one of the boys.
One of the boys. One of the commandos.
Oh, such a beautiful kit and some lovely skin work on that as well.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
It is a beautiful kit, and this is entirely contrasts.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's a Zenithal contrast work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I will say that This is not the Zenithal that I'm sure you would both approve of.
Oh,
in the form
it's
of,
going to be the dry brush version, isn't it?
It's fully dry brushed.
Yeah, the slap chop method.
Basically, slap chop. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not basically slap chop. Yes, it's slap chop.
Yeah, I've done that on my Alpha Legion. I regretted it.
But it does look good.
It does look amazing. It just takes so long.
Yeah.
Yes and no. So this one was done. In case you couldn't, it's pretty obvious that it's not done in the standard like black and then grey and white. I wanted to get something that's I've been basically experimenting with different kinds of doing that Zenithal style. So this was Xandri Dust in lieu of grey, and then Dawn Yellow as the highlight.
Oh, okay.
So it ends up being like closer towards that yellow. And then it is, I think it's Gilly Green from Army Painter for the skin. The red is just like Flesh Terror's red. And then just like some various different kind of styles of leather around the place for everything else. But the skin, like having it mainly painted Marines, the contrast going over skin just like absolutely was so nice. Just be like, there's some really nice lows, there's some really nice highs, and it just picked it out super well.
What it was originally designed for.
It is like contrast and orcs, they just go together so well.
Yeah.
Which is good considering how much detail is on that model.
Yeah.
Because as we discussed last week, obviously, when I mentioned the fact that I'd love to do an orc army, it's this that put me off. It's painting because of all those details. They look amazing, but they take so much effort to paint.
Yeah, in a horde style army, that's like.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you went and decided to paint one, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I don't know why. I just felt compelled after our last conversation when you were like, "These are going to be a problem to paint," and apparently my brain went,
Gauntlet down.
You say I can't. I say, why not?
John after the stream pretty much just went, hold my beer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's going to take a while, but I'm going to paint every detail. The kit for the commandos is it is a really nice kit. It's sat there for ages. But it is fun how like every single one is a little bit different.
Yeah, I've got a lot of personality, that kit.
And then I kind of did a little bit of a stumble, trip, fall, roll down the hill of looking into orky stuff.
Yes, I think. I think. Well, it wasn't just you though, was it? Because me and you both had a little bit of a peruse online, didn't we? We had a long conversation about a few potential things we might do.
A few little,
and should we show Joe what might be happening?
Yeah, hot off the press. It's a little Gorkanaut or a Morkanaut, depending on what you're after.
That doesn't look terribly Alpha Legion or Dark Angels.
It's not, you're right. It might be a little side project me and John are going to work on.
The ethos being JB design, I paint, but like alongside everything else.
Yeah. So we'll still maintain our main army, but we might do this as like a little passion project.
But yeah, that does look sick.
A little joint army.
I think a horde enemy would be really good for a potential campaign.
And there is so much you could do with them.
Oh, I'm going to do so much with them.
I know, and I greatly look forward to seeing the tiny things coming out of it.
Because I'm not going to paint it, I'm just going to do every base like a mini diorama.
Perfect. I will happily paint it because I don't have to make it. What I was going to say is, through more luck than judgment, I kind of eyeballed the scale, and I eyeballed the scale, be like, I'll see. Like, I'm pretty sure it's roughly about this, and then got a correct scale knight put it next to it, and found a size comparison picture, and they are like perfect scale.
Nice.
So essentially, your Gorkanauts and your Morkanauts are your Orky knights. So you can you can have your knights.
Oh, and you know I like big stompy robots now.
You do love your big stompy robots.
You do.
Also, I found one for that's only recently just come out. Hold on. Is it the Gargant? The big one?
The Gargants.
Yeah.
The Mega Gargants.
I think it might be intended to be a Mega Gargant. But in peak the level of humor that one would expect from orcs, there is just a giant cannon at the base of this thing.
I'm in. I am 100% in.
It's just all that joke. They were like, we've seen that joke and we're gonna just make that joke.
Yes,
I was genuinely surprised with how nicely this came out.
It looks brilliant.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get my hands on it and do something with the base.
Yeah.
I'll
I might try and get it primed and painted up before I see you next, and throw it your way, so then you can build everything else around it. Just have a tiny little Gorkanaut.
It should be fun. Okay.
Or a Morkanaut. I don't know which one's which.
I think the Morkanaut is a shooty version, and then the Gorkanaut is like a punchy version, I think. But I might be wrong.
We might need to do some research. I just enjoy the potential idea that they're just interchangeable names, and it's whatever you ask on the day is what it is. In absolute orc style.
Yep.
The other thing that this particular orcscapade has let me down is finding out a game which is currently on Kickstarter, and I will happily shout this out because this game just reading about it has made me laugh and want to play it. The game is called Space Gits.
Right.
You play as two teams of 5 drunken orcs staggering about the place and trying to loot. The entire game is intended to be a dexterity-based skirmish game.
Right.
So every time you get hit by either bullet or by being punched in the face, you put a dice down, and it has to stay in contact with the base. And every time you get hit, you put another dice on top, and you make a dice tower. And that dice tower has to stay with that orc the entire time you're moving, and if it falls over, the orc falls over.
Okay.
And at the end of every activation, because it's basically alternating activations, you put another dice on, because that's the orc taking a sip. Taking a swig. So they're getting drunker as you go.
Mm-hmm.
You decide where you're moving, not by drawing a line or deciding where you're moving. You roll dice. And where the dice land determines the direction that you move and how far you move in that direction. So you roll like 3 dice, and you can choose which order you approach those dice in, but it is from the model you move in that direction until you hit something or you run out of distance that you can move.
That does sound...
Shooting is done in the exact same way. You cast your dice, and if they're within range and they hit, they do damage. Doesn't matter what they hit, you just start shooting in every direction. So, is it friendly? Is it not? It doesn't matter. It's the same kind of shot. You're just like spraying wildly. Fighting is done by you run into the base of the person just by moving, by staggering into them. You start fighting. It's entirely done through rock, paper, scissors. It has a built-in half-an-hour timer, which is the point at which as it's described, the fuzz turn up, and anybody who's on the floor at that point is being arrested for too much rabble.
Drunk and disorderly.
Drunk and disorderly. And there is like an entire like table of things that you can get. You can even get vehicles. They're even more chaotic because you're literally drunk driving.
Amazing.
And it also feels like the perfect game to play with those cursed squig dice. The ones that bounce.
Yeah.
Like that it is the game that was meant for that. So yes, I'm definitely I need to at least try this game because it just sounds utterly hilarious. My favorite addition that somebody has suggested to the rules is, so every time you activate, you take a swig. It should be a drinking game that you also take, that you as the person in charge have to take a swig after every activation. So, yeah. I have nothing else to add other than the fact that I want to play the orc drinking game, and that's it.
Cool. I'm in. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
And it is designed for as many people as you want. Also, there is no deployment zones. You just put them wherever, providing there's they can't go too close to anybody else, but you just scatter them across the board.
That could be quite fun.
Yeah. Literally. It's designed as a game that you just play randomly.
Perfectly orky. I love it.
Delightfully orky, and yeah, I've seen. I watched the person who made it did it was an 11-minute video, and I understood every rule in 11 minutes.
Amazing.
Not bad.
And at least 2 to 3 minutes of that video was made up with the song that they have to advertise it, which is loosely a song. So yes, Space Gifts is what you need to look up, and it is hilarious.
I might have to have a look at that after we've done recording today.
Yeah, it's a very unserious game, but it's so good.
But yeah, back on track, as it were.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to playing around with some Legions orcs.
Some tiny orcs and the Horde army.
Yeah, honestly, it's something I've always wanted to do. So the fact that I can do it with someone who's actually happy to paint it is going to make life so much more fun.
Do you know what else you can still do? You can buy all of those Imperial Guard tanks and orc them up.
Gee.
It's true.
Well, what I was going to say to you actually is I still have some 40k scale Leman Russes.
Oh.
Unpainted. And 3 Valkyries.
Oh my god.
So I'm just saying, when we start doing a bit more 40k stuff, I already have the vehicles.
Stunning, no notes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you found rules for orcs at Legion scale?
No, we've only just sort of come to the conclusion that we're going to make the army at the moment.
Right, so the person that does the Tyranids and Eldar rules has also done orcs.
Oh, okay. We might need to get onto this quicker than we anticipated.
Yep. I mean, orcs are one of the ones that were in original Epic as well, so they probably got some rules that we can look at from there.
Yeah, I mean, we make. I mean, I am looking at the big stompy ropes thinking I could probably paint those.
I feel like our biggest hurdle, however, our absolute biggest hurdle to the orcs is not the painting or the rules. It's going to be stopping L from killing you for doing the orc voice.
yeah, that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, that's going to be the problem.
She's going to hate it so much.
I know.
But I'm going to love it.
I know. Oh, yep. So good.
Yeah. Right. Wow. I think that is pretty much it for Tankard Talk for today.
Yeah. Only a little one today.
Yeah, it was little, but I think it was quite exciting. Certainly for us.
Yeah.
So a new army will be coming to Legions. Another new army is coming to Legions.
Another one.
But yes, this will probably be a little bit more slow grow. But if we get into it, we might figure out a way of getting it done a bit quicker.
And bringing us back around to where we're going today, they would make a very good foil for a campaign.
They would make a very good foil for a campaign. They would indeed. So, speaking of which, shall we jump over to the main discussion for today?
Absolutely.
All right.
Let's go.
See you all in just a moment.
See.
Hello and welcome back. We are now in the main discussion of today. We are talking narratives, more specifically narrative campaigns, and more of a focus on Legions, but the ideas will translate to pretty much every war game you could possibly play. So, I mean, I've obviously got my show notes and you guys have all read them. But something that's just kind of cropped into mind, because I can't remember if you mentioned this while we were recording or not, John, but you don't have any real experience with campaigns.
No, not properly. So I've never been a part of like a 40k campaign. The closest that I've come to wargame campaigns has been games like Necromunda or Mordheim and Trench Crusade, where they all have like campaign rules. And admittedly, like we've not run those as like proper long campaigns either. They were like, there's campaign rules for like things that happen at the end of the battle, because it's always funny to see you roll up and you go, okay, what happened to this guy? Oh, he's lost a leg. Like that. It was, it's quite nice at the end of like a little skirmish game to be like when you've got those tables to kind of roll off. But in terms of like long-term running campaigns, I myself haven't been a part of like any kind of long-term running campaign. I've seen some long-term running campaigns and like the kind of the progression that they've been doing in there. And coming from a D&D perspective, similarities in that regard, but specifically wargame campaigns, no.
Okay. Obviously, I know Joe has at least some experience, because me and Joe, when we first got into Warhammer, when you first got into Warhammer, really, because obviously I've been doing it for a while. When we were introduced and we started sort of figuring out that actually this is something that me and you could do together, we very quickly jumped onto Crusade, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we started playing just as 8th edition. Was it 8th edition or 9th edition?
Yeah, it was just right at the end of 8th edition.
Yeah.
And then 9th edition rolled around with the first Crusade rules, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And we started getting into that and started playing some games that way.
Yeah.
And that was a map-based campaign, because I actually made like a graphic with coloured territories that would slowly change, and certain areas gave you buffs and stuff like that.
Areas
cool.
capture and everything.
Have you experienced any other kind of campaign at all that's wargame related?
No, not really. I mean, I don't do an awful lot of outside of this group. I don't do an awful lot of wargaming, so that's pretty much the experience I have. So
that's cool. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this you guys are familiar with. I've experienced quite a few, almost every version, I think now, or at least the versions we're going to talk about. So it'll be interesting to find out what you think of the different systems, and a new system that I think I've come up with. I haven't seen it anywhere else. So if someone else has come up with the idea before, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your idea. I did come up with it in isolation.
Just you wait, GW releasing tomorrow.
Guaranteed, they will release it soon. Crusade 2.0.
Hold on, I'll just check the community page just in case they've just announced it as we're talking. Watch the article writing as you're saying the words.
Yeah, I'm going to put a massive thing in post. They did it again. Okay, so let's have a quick chat about why narrative campaigns matter. Okay, because although you might not have played one, John, or Joe's got the limited experience with just in this group, I think hopefully you should be able to appreciate why a campaign matters to us as players and as groups. Because obviously there are games that I know you both are heavily into, like D&D, which is obviously a campaign system essentially.
Yeah.
Not always, obviously. So the idea of a long-running narrative is not something alien to you guys at all. No. So in the context of doing it for, say, Warhammer and Legions Imperialis, what do campaigns potentially bring to our games that we wouldn't normally get from just isolated gaming?
So I think from the perspective of what I've enjoyed, at least going through and looking like some of the campaign rules and stuff like that, the bit that I actually most enjoy about like campaign rules that exist is very much like the consequences of the battle, because when it's done in when it's done in that very kind of like isolated approach, you never get the feeling of, oh, I need to be careful with what I'm doing. I can just send waves of guys to the front line, and it doesn't matter how many I lose. If I win this one game, it's going to have zero impact. Whereas in all the ones that we've done where I'm kind of going, we very much try to play it from like a campaign mindset. Even if it is just like a one-off game, it's played from a campaign mindset. And I'm going, I don't want to lose this guy. He's like, this is my leader that I'm trying to build up. I remember I had a game with Mordheim, where I was building a little Skaven team, and I had my leader. I pumped like I had him for a game, got a load of money, and basically was trying to build him into like a little clan scryer, like engineer. It's clan scryer, isn't it? For
the sort of tech savvy.
Yeah. Admittedly, the game after I got him his like tech upgrades, I fell off a roof and got kicked to death by a bunch of orcs. But that had that moment of like I wouldn't have felt the impact of losing that guy if I hadn't been like, he's won a game, he's got his stuff. Right, now I can go and be cool. He was not cool. He literally immediately died. But the idea was there, and that impact only came from the fact that there was a building, there was a consequence kind of to it. So I think anything that any kind of campaign is that idea of like consequences to actions that you've taken. You win something, you get something better. You lose a guy, you feel that impact kind of from it, and you almost play a little bit cagey, a little bit more cagey to it, but like those wins feel better because of it.
Yeah, I think to add to that, like you can get into a routine with like isolated games where you play it gets into that sort of thing of like it just is a game rather than like creating the storytelling and like thinking about sort of what makes sense for the army and the narrative of the army and things. It becomes just like it can fall into that sort of like just rolling dice and moving pieces kind of thing.
It becomes more like just a generic board game.
Yeah.
Obviously, very complicated generic board game,
but still, it's like
yeah. It's like the difference, I suppose, liking it to video games. It's a bit like the difference between playing a multiplayer mission and a single player mission.
Yeah.
One is designed to tell a story, the other is to smash a few buttons and blow some stuff up.
I was actually kind of going back to that, like a game. I like the idea of like relating it to like video games. It's almost a difference of like your isolated games are almost kind of like a bit. And there was a whole video about how this isn't really like a proper stuff, but like they're roguelike in the sense of you start with you start at this kind of like the same level, and then depending on what systems are in the game, you're going to end at a certain point, but then your run restarts, your run resets back to the beginning. The army is back to the state that it was in. And I also think, with things that are isolated, you're almost encouraged to really build around, I'm going to build a list that is good against the person that I kind of know I'm going to be playing against.
Yeah.
Whereas something with the campaign, it's like you start that and you can't go, I'm going to build a list that's going to be good against this person because you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know how that thing's going to progress. And you're almost more encouraged to kind of be like, okay, if I know I can't build something that's going to be specifically good for this game, I'm going to build something I want to build.
Yeah, it gives more creativity to the lists as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think this kind of sort of the point we're trying to get to, I think, by what we're sort of suggesting here then, is that it helps drive narrative gaming into telling stories, which you obviously can do in a one-shot and isolated game. But when you have a connection of games, there's a natural evolution of a story, which helps to really help you sort of immerse yourself in the world and the army and the characters that you're playing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I definitely have a habit of almost putting myself in the shoes of the main character of the army. And you kind of almost first person perspective feel the dread of when something's going to go wrong, and the elation of when things go right.
Yeah,
we're clearly playing different games because I never get that one.
See, I just feel hungry, you know.
Okay, so we've kind of already touched on the next bit, because the next bit really was how do they encourage story and continuity, which we've kind of touched on nicely. But something you did mention very briefly, I think, was how does it maybe encourage creative thinking inside of our games?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely encourages, like, at least from where I'm sat about campaigns, is like you've got to be. You're actually given probably more freedom in terms of creativity with like where you're going to take your list building, where you're going to be maybe approaching a problem. From like a lot of the campaigns where you have both positives and negatives that occur, you've got to kind of have that. How can I? If I've got somebody who has like a negative trait that they picked up from at some point in the campaign, how am I going to kind of work around that problem? And you've got to like take a different tactic, take a different approach. If you get a guy in Mordheim or Necromunda who suddenly like loses some speed that you've been kind of used to, but okay, how can I play kind of around that aspect? Or if you get a buff that you didn't have before, suddenly that like character's changed in the way that they're going to be able to play. So then you can take a slightly different approach to it. Or if you've got some of the ones where you just get random gear and stuff like that, again, you can kind of approach it in a very different way because it's different from each game to next. Like a character can change to a certain degree depending on what kind of rule set you're looking at, wildly differently between games, or have this kind of like gradual kind of progression throughout. But in each one where you've got those kind of permanent changes, you can make, I guess, more creative kind of control to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it also encourages sort of creative ways to play certain armies as well. It's like, for example, if you have an army like World Eaters that's very much throw it up the board and and hit things, and you lose some here and there. If you've got consequences for losing some here and there, or it costs like resources to like regrow those units and things, it forces you to think more about preserving them than you would in a one-off game, and thinking of ways that you can play that more sort of cagily or like in a different style than you would necessarily.
So I've got two examples of is what I would call creative gaming, almost, or creative thinking during games that was a direct result of playing narrative campaigns. So one example is a friend of mine plays Ultramarines, and he has a captain model that he's very proud of. It's beautifully painted. But in every game I've played, I kill it every time. It's like my mission. I just kill it. Right? It got to a point where narratively, he decided that this character now is just a coward and just hides in the back so that he doesn't get taken down.
You're like, I'm gonna hunt this guy.
So yeah, generally I was like, right, cool. So I now need to start adding deep strike units so I can just hunt this guy down and take him out.
Oh my god.
So you kind of create this weird narrative just by the nature of playing the game. You kind of, that character gained a personality because of what was happening to him.
Mm-hmm.
And on a similar vein, I had an issue of one of my characters was almost going to die in a game, and obviously I really didn't want that character to die because there was actually a risk during this particular narrative that he would die permanently, and he was quite high level. So I was like, okay, don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So in this game, when he was about to get shot by something big in the turn, I actually positioned a vehicle unit in the way, which you'd never normally do in a game, specifically so the vehicle would take the hit and save my character. So almost like a diving save kind of idea, but
yeah, very much a get down, Mr. President kind of vibe.
Which doesn't happen too much in games because normally you just think, do you know what? I'll just sacrifice the character and keep the tank alive. But in this one, I was like, no, I need that character in the next game.
Yeah.
So you make different decisions and you change the way you play the game entirely sometimes.
It adds higher stakes. Like
actions have consequences.
You can't just use that captain again next game. Like, if it's gone, it's gone. Right?
Yeah, so it's an interesting idea, and it's definitely proven itself quite fun in the past. So speaking of which, go on.
I think also as another point from the other side's perspective, if they'd have got that kill on the captain, that's so much more satisfying, knowing that it's like gone for the campaign than like knowing that it's gone until the next game.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of like a high priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite cool. Okay, so that's what campaigns can bring. But what campaigns or campaign systems are we familiar with? Do you guys know of the different types, or would you like me to go through them?
I mean, I can. My experience of it will be very, very short because the only campaign stuff that I've ever done has been very much like random roll mission approach. So you've got a band and they're going to clash against another band, but every time it's kind of basically a random roll in terms of the mission that you're going to be experiencing. So it's not really like a proper like formed campaign. It's more of a story of these two like war bands bumping into each other whilst they're trying to go and do other stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've done that style. Like, that's the only thing I'm familiar with, really.
Yeah. Okay, well, so I think one version that I think will probably bring what most people might be familiar with coming in from the context of current Warhammer 40k is their Crusade system. And I believe there is a Age of Sigmar equivalent. I want to say it's Path to Glory or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Path to Glory, but there is an equivalent.
Yeah, but whatever it's called. Both of the major systems have this campaign system. And essentially it's what you were describing, John. It's just you track the narrative of your own army, but the games are somewhat randomized or predetermined. There's no set rules, no set narrative, so to speak, unless you apply one. It's just a rough system where things level up and gain traits and whatnot. Okay. So that's one way of doing it, which means that you only you have to worry about tracking your own stuff, and that's okay. That works. Especially if you're sort of hot swapping out in a community maybe and just jumping between games and you're not playing in a regular setting. But there are sort of more structured narratives, and that I've kind of identified the three main ones that I've come across over the years.
Okay.
So you have a linear mission sequence, which is where you just have a set of missions all laid out with specific stories and you just play through them. And the winner of the previous gains a benefit in the next one, generally.
Okay, makes sense.
So essentially, to again use a video game analogy, that is just essentially your single player campaign. You just go through the missions.
Yeah.
You then have what I'm calling a branching tree, which is very similar concept. You have a set of missions, but each mission selection is determined by the previous.
Yeah.
So you have 1 mission, 2 missions, 4 missions, and so on, as deep as you want to go, and you just follow a branch.
I was going to say like my reference point for this one is games like FTL. Have you ever played that one?
I have not.
But like there's a lot of ones where it's got like you do this mission and then you've got like a split, and depending on which path you've gone down will then determine where you're going to go from there, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I if talking about video, I would use something like a dialogue tree as an example. You just follow a certain path, or if you're familiar with some of the better RPGs that have existed, your actions change what happens later on in the story.
Yeah.
So that's essentially that kind of idea. Which we could go for examples, but that could take an age. And the other one is a map campaign. So you actually have a physical or digital map, and you take over territories, and you move either a token that represents your faction. You may have more than one, but generally you only get the one. So to link back to sort of like a video game Warhammer example, Dawn of War, Dark Crusade, Soulstorm, those kind of games where you had your armies and you jumped across territories.
Yep.
Basically that. And that's obviously the kind of system me and Joe have done in the past.
Yeah.
That is one that I have. I don't have personal experience with, but I have heard about somebody who had years and years ago. But they were part of a campaign that was being run in a Games Workshop shop, and they had that big map. But then at the end of the final thing of the campaign was a big Tyranid invasion, which was coming down from the top of the map, spreading out from there. Which is very, very cool. And basically it was all of the people who worked in the store were this Tyranid army that was just going to take over. And there were some very, very fast alliances that were made suddenly, being I've got nothing left, but between us we've got something left.
that is the beauty of what those campaigns can be. You can kind of get these accidental narratives, or sometimes on purpose. And there's lots of ways you can do it as well. I mean, I know there's been a recent sort of surge in hex tiles for making maps. I know there's a big Kickstarter going on that Mini Wargaming have been hyping up.
Yeah.
Which look brilliant, but again, that is another level of commitment to build a physical 3D printed map that you then paint.
It's cool, but
it's beautiful. I'm going to tell everyone right now, we're not doing that unless one of you two want to do it, because that's a level of time I cannot commit with everything else. Love to do it, but it's just not practical at the moment. Maybe in the future. It would be very cool to have, but it's just not practical at the moment. Anything that we would do would probably be more digital, and that's the way I did it with Joe when we first started playing.
Yeah.
I had a digital map with overlays and stuff that was quite cool. I quite enjoyed it. It was quite fun.
That's cool.
So those are the three main types that I'm familiar with, or have been familiar with over the years. I'm sure there are other types or variations on these, but those are the core ones, I would say. Yeah. Let's have a quick discussion then. So we've talked about the types of campaigns that kind of exist. So let's discuss maybe what might be the core elements of making a strong campaign, or something that is engaging. So basically, what makes a game for us good or interesting? Not a game, but a campaign. Now, obviously, we do have to address the concept of the scale of the campaign. So obviously within our team there is 4 of us, so it's what you might call a multiplayer campaign. There are variations on this. Obviously you can have 2-player campaigns if it's just you and a friend or a sibling or parent or child, whichever the dynamic is. Or partner.
Just somebody else. I love all of the added caveats that you did to that, rather than just being like, and somebody else.
I just like to give examples, okay?
Very helpful.
And then there, I mean, I've just seen in my notes as well. I mentioned something called an escalation format, which is something I've not really heard the term before, but I understand the concept has existed for a while, which is where you start off small and build up.
Yeah.
So, in fact, that's actually how Crusade is designed.
That's how it plays.
Yeah, you have a set number of points, and then over time you can buy in resources and increase your points.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's more of a mechanic rather than a campaign scale. I've probably put that in the wrong part of my show notes.
Okay. I mean, that's still cool to know, because like that's like I said, of the campaigns that I've played, or the games and systems of campaigns that I played, they very much fall into that kind of escalation approach.
Yeah. And that does seem to be quite a common way of doing things.
Which, I mean, it's cool. It gives you resources that you need to manage, which is always fun. There is some of them that I've seen where there is like kind of catch-up mechanics for people who are doing badly.
Yeah, there is that. There is that in
Crusade. Because they were talking about kind of mechanics is definitely something that needs to be in there, but I feel like that might be a bit for a different section of this.
There's also that sort of idea with that of like building an army together as well, right? Because I know very much we sort of over lockdown were doing that sort of growing the army as we grow the Crusade force, and like trying.
This is a bit of a side tangent, but do you remember the second phase of the COVID lockdowns when I was running campaigns through webcams?
Oh God, Joe.
How?
So,
I would deliver the like fresh batch of my newly painted models to you, and then
I would set up a webcam over a board, and we would play over the internet.
Yeah.
I love that there was like tabletop sim available. You're like, no. There is a better solution to this.
There's models.
No, because I had an archaic laptop that had no way near the capacity for tabletop sim.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, so we did real life sim.
Yeah,
you know, I very much appreciate that is a level of trust in the game.
Which I'd like to add also. My laptop was also not great at running that.
There was
a webcam feed.
There had to be a level of trust, because obviously Joe had to trust that I moved his units appropriately, and I had to trust that he was rolling and telling me what actually he rolled.
Yeah, you know what? That works both ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite an interesting time.
I noticed how that's not down as a potential format in your show notes.
No, because it's probably not practical for most people. And it's not really a format of campaign, more of a format of how to play the game in dire circumstances.
I was going to say, I don't think that's a format that we necessarily should be aspiring to either.
No, not necessarily. If you want to give it a go, though, I can tell you it does work. It might not be the most engaging way of playing the game for one person, and it's a lot of work for the other.
Yeah, I was going to say,
but it is, if you want that fix, it's a way of doing it. But anyway, back on track.
Yep.
Tangent over. Okay, so yes, the scale of campaigns that primarily we're going to be concerned with are probably going to be multiplayer campaigns, because that's what we will be dealing with eventually.
Okay.
But we'll try and if there is a point where we think that something might not apply or need to be adapted for, say, a 2-player or something else, then we might want to kind of point that out. Okay. So one thing that I think is important potentially for what makes a campaign feel strongly narrative focused from my perspective is the idea of resources, and depending on the type of game. Now, I will say that I lean towards preferring stuff like map-based campaigns, territory control. So if we were to go, say, down the map route, I think something that was quite important is establishing resource control or allocation or gathering and a system for tracking progress. The primary method of tracking, say, your resources is your army, isn't it? So your points values.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there are potentially other things you could add in to layer a little bit more nuance into a game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we go into full on. Let's have a money system and track income and and rations and stuff like that. But
every Marine has carry weight.
But
have you heard of the game Campaign for North Africa?
No.
It is a famously complex campaign game. To a point where I believe the average, how you get it's a box board game, but you know how you get on the side, it's like this game will take approximately blah to blah to be able to play.
Oh.
I think on the side of there it's like 1 to 2 months. It's a game that is often played through systems like mail in what you want it to do, because that's the kind of system, like the level of system that we're working to.
Oh my God.
It is very complex, and you have to manage everything. Like, you have your supply lines, but you're managing the individual supplies that are going on those supply lines.
Okay. That is not what I'm going to suggest. If you would like to, go for it.
I was going to say, none of us are Ultramarine players, so we're not going to be busting out those spreadsheets.
No. But you can add some sort of light resource management to the game.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I'm going to use another video game example and go back to Dawn of War. Like, I certainly remember in Dark Crusade, certain territories would give you a bonus, which we will call a resource, an extra thing you can do or an extra thing you can add. And I think that's quite nice as well, because it kind of provides an anchor point or an objective for you during the campaign that's not just smash the opponent. It's go and grab this because it will help me smash the opponent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think you could just leave it at just tracking points and the scale of your armies, but I think having at least just a little bit of extra resources on there just makes something a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, and also, like, it adds that added play that you can, like, deny resources to, like, the other player. Like, to take an example from my weekend just gone, one of the big sort of battles in the campaign there, we were grabbing some, like, magic bits of wood to deny the opposing. Yeah, there were some, like, so it was like some planks of wood from, like, an old shipwreck that they were going to use to finish a ritual to, like, make a place a coastline that wasn't a coastline previously.
Depending on where that happens, that feels like that could ruin a lot of places.
Yeah, an entirely landlocked state into a coastline. But yeah, so what the objective of that, instead of just go in and smash the opponent, was obviously keep the opponent busy while someone finds and denies them the wood they need.
Yeah, and again, going back to 40k's Crusade system, and I assume similar for Age of Sigmar, their additional resource system, which they do have, is requisition points. Allows you to purchase upgrades or special abilities or special equipment. So back in 9th edition, you actually bought warlord traits, bought relics, using these resources. Normally, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
something like that.
Buying relics, buying resources are always good fun. Like that, yeah.
So there's a couple of little ways you can spice up a campaign by having this sort of way of upgrading things. Now, personally, I'm going to use this a little bit of a tangent point, but it is relevant. Now, I think the Crusade system is pretty good. I think the problem with it is it's too much. Like, every unit having experience and upgrading is a lot to keep track of for most people.
When we were doing ours, just getting to the point of like, and I was playing Custodes, so I didn't have that many units to keep track of. But once everything is sort of piled up, it makes a game that you've already got a lot to keep track of. Like, you've got even more to keep track of. It was definitely worse in 9th, I think, than it is sort of now because of all of the extra stuff that 9th had, like stratagems-wise.
They simplified it a lot, but it's still a little bit too much. And I would kind of recommend maybe, and this is kind of how I would have done Crusade if we were to pursue it in 40k at the moment, is that rather than units being upgraded, it would be detachments that get upgraded, or armies. Yeah. So you'd get like one or two flat bonuses for an experienced company or an experienced force, and still allow the characters to level up normally, because, characters. So that the key is finding the balance between adding fun, not admin.
Yeah.
And that will.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke on this, unless you find admin fun, but
well, unless you're an Ultramarines player,
yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot of very cool things that you could add.
Yeah, so many.
Half the time I just forget that I had them.
Yeah. Right. So you've got to find the line, and this is also really key. Everybody who's partaking in the campaign needs to agree that they're happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a good rule of thumb would be the person who is interested in the least amount of additions is the one you should go with.
Yeah,
because the more
because like then you've got that that thing of everyone is having, because if you're having fun with the additions,
you're going to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
You're going to stay invested in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Which does bring me nicely on to the next point. How do we keep everyone engaged in a campaign? Okay, keeping everyone invested, because something that can happen in a lot of these campaigns, particularly map-based campaigns, which is kind of where I would be pushing us to go. Yeah, is that you can end up reaching a point of no return where one side feels like they are going to win no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So almost like if you imagine a map and one side is now painted half the map and you're still stuck in a small corner, there is this feeling of, well, what's the point in continuing anymore?
Yeah. And I think, especially from some of the games, or like some of the systems that I had to go at, I think that is where something like some kind of catch-up mechanic is absolutely vital. Going back to the Mordheim campaign that I said about, in that I lost my leader, who was arguably the best one that you could have, like the best individual model that you could have on that game, and at that point, I could never get them back. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be consequences for actions that happen, but at that stage, I was like, there was so much monetary resources invested into this character, and I cannot get them back. Every game I'm going into at this point now, I'm just going to be on the back foot, and there's going to be no catch up that I could even ever feasibly do to get up to a stage where I would have a reasonable kind of chance. So if it is a situation where you're kind of you've got that point of somebody is winning, and they painted the map. You need to make sure that there is, to a certain degree, some kind of catch up. I guess the flip side of that is you need to make sure that you're not punishing the person who's winning.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're doing well, so should they not be rewarded for doing well? Mm-hmm. I don't have an answer to that, but that would be where I'd be coming from with it.
Okay. I may have an idea on that count, but have you got any thoughts before I go into that, Joe?
Yeah, I think for something specifically like that, obviously if the mechanic is like the leader is dead. The leader is dead. But there could also be the potential to create sort of rescue mission type things to like retrieve lost assets, or even if the leader is dead, retrieve assets to like regain resources to make it sort of less like you've lost all of those resources with the character if you pull off this like very difficult objective kind of thing.
Okay. So my thoughts towards this is that you should have some kind of like criteria that you have to meet before you reach what you might call a point of no return. Okay. So let's say one player is winning consistently and has now reached a point where they are basically in a snowball. But before they get to the point where it feels oppressive, so let's say, for example, you've got a map, there's 10 territories, and player 1 gets to 7 territories. Okay, so we're now controlling nearly 3/4 of the table, or 3/4 of the map. They're in that snowball effect. They're going to snowball now, because those last 3 or so games probably are going to result in the attacker or the player 1 winning. Yes?
Yeah.
So, instead of continuing the campaign at that point, what you do is you give the currently losing side a gambit or a gamble, a final mission that doesn't necessarily mean that they can win the campaign, but they can give the player 1 a Pyrrhic victory rather than a complete victory. So you do like some kind of epic last stand, or pushing deep into enemy territory with your last troops to deploy a massive doomsday weapon, or it could literally just be, right, we're going to pull all our forces back into a central location and we're just going to try and get everybody out. And it's going to be like a wave assault mission where the player 1 just gets to play with all their fun toys, and player 2 just grabs an army and just says, right, I'm going to hold off as long as possible, and if I can survive 5 turns of just being absolutely assaulted, you get a Pyrrhic victory rather than a total victory.
I really like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Because then that moves on to sort of like expanding the narrative of like you can think about where that, like if it's a retreat mission, where that army goes, what do they encounter there? Like it feeds in to further story.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thought on how to kind of mitigate that. So it basically just comes to deciding at what point you feel like it's worth the losing side's no longer having fun by getting stomped.
Yeah.
And so you basically give them the option to just play some cool narrative heroic stand or mission, just to make them invest in that final mission to finish that story.
Yeah. That's kind of like push thing.
And obviously that can entirely depend on your faction or the personalities within your faction. You make that choice for your faction. A Space Marine player could do anything with that, because obviously there's many different factions within Space Marine. So an Alpha Legion player like myself might go, do you know what? My last mission is going to be, I'm going to try and deploy a doomsday weapon into your home territory because we're Alpha Legion. If we're going to lose, we're going to make you burn as well. But a World Eaters player might say, well, we're not going to run. We're just going to put everything we've got into one massive army and we're going to fight to the last. Whereas an Ultramarines player might be, do you know what? We're going to fall back strategically and we're going to do some kind of cool defensive line as we try and evac civilians and stuff like that. So you can kind of build that.
And the Orc player is just going to be in for a real good time.
The Orc player can do whatever wacky stuff they want to do.
Paint everyone purple.
So you can kind of have fun with it. And I think that, personally for me, that's kind of something that I think would kind of solve the problem of well, one side is just going to be shitting on the other, basically.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
Yeah, no, that's a very cool solution to that problem, and I like the sound of where that would go. You get the opportunity to still feel like you've had an impact on the game, even as you're losing.
Yeah.
And the other thing, obviously, as well, is once you do start losing, you know you're losing the campaign, you lose the will to play the game. But also, if you decide that, right, cool, we are done with this campaign, so we're going to play one big final mission, you can then move on to a new campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That campaign is done. You can say, cool, you won that first campaign, great. Let's move on to the next one. New story, new mission.
You
new
come
character.
back as your nicely painted character returns after they've fallen as son of this character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my solution.
No, that's good. And I feel like in much the same way as like kind of coming at it to a certain degree from like a bit of a D&D perspective of if you hit an endpoint in a campaign, it does then go, you're now free to play a new campaign, which often, to a certain degree, campaigns feel like they do. I've not been in one. Sorry, that was about to sound like I've been in one that has felt like that. But I've seen things of like campaigns that have dragged on and on and on and on and on, just because like they didn't want it to end, but it essentially outstayed its welcome.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that would want to try and avoid in a campaign is you don't want to outstay the welcome of this is fun just for the sake of doing it. It reminds me quite a lot of did either of you two ever play the game PlanetSide or PlanetSide 2?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
So that was a 3-player a 3-faction multiplayer shooter, but it was a persistent world. So like they segmented out into kind of like little areas, but you could move between the areas as like fights were going on. And like the intention being is that up to like 100 on each side could end up in one area. So it was like these big grand battles. But as you took areas, the map would move. And there were times in that where essentially the game got to a point where like one faction has just dominated, just cleared the map. And they control everything, and there's no kind of going back. And that very much had that kind of like that last stand moment of everybody who's been playing as their team for this entire like campaign is trying to hold that home base whilst the waves are coming from the other side. And then when they eventually lose, because actually at that stage there really wasn't much clawing back. Like they might do some clawing back, like you'd have teams that would go off and they'd be like, okay, we're gonna like try and do like a secret alpha strike, on behind enemy lines to try and get some ground. But at that losing point, then the map gets reset, everybody goes back to their starting point, and the campaign starts again. It's a really cool idea for a game. I didn't get super into it, but I gave it a go and was like, this is a very cool idea. So it's kind of something like that where you get to that end point, you get that moment at the end of it, and then you get to start again and maybe do something a little bit different this time.
Okay, so if we check, if we now look at the concept of balance in terms of both narrative and equality, should everybody have equal forces throughout a campaign?
I think certainly at the beginning.
I don't think anyone would disagree that having an equal start is probably a good foundation for most campaigns. But I want to challenge the concept, basically, of should you always have a balanced force in a campaign?
See, okay. I think as far as a campaign goes, I don't think necessarily you should have an equal force, because there's going to be points in the campaign where again, going back to this idea of the interesting thing is when actions have consequences. A one in a roll of a 1 in any game can be just as interesting as the highest roll you can get on the respective dice, a 6 or a 20, going D&D, Warhammer, respectively. But you need to make sure that there are consequences for both of those actions taking place.
Yeah.
What I would argue the other way, though, is if in one resource you are on the negative, there should be something to bring you back in the other way. And what I mean by that is, say you're going into something and you've lost a ton of troops. You're coming in and you've got, respective forces, pulling numbers. You've got just 1,000 points left. They've got 3,000. The consequence of the actions that you've taken has led to the point where you only have 1,000 and you're going up against 3,000. What I think would make for a more, because then at that stage you're immediately on the back foot. That game is not going to go, if you just play it as it normally would be played, you're just gonna lose straight away. Like you might be able to claw something back, but there's such a disparity in the points. And it's a game, and the games that we play are obviously based off of points. But what I would say is that, okay, from that perspective, you're screwed. But you've got this smaller force. Maybe there's ways that it could be okay, well, you're on the back foot, but maybe you can get advantages that occur on the field that you could take advantage of. Because you've got the smaller force, you've had the ability to infiltrate and go and set up traps that you can then spring on the enemy whilst they're coming in with that bigger force. So it's not necessarily a case of that you're immediately not getting the consequence of your smaller force, but you can play around that and you can do things that maybe you couldn't do if the person's coming in with a bigger force. And maybe it's a case that actually then that person who's coming in is going, okay, do I commit my 3,000 points to this, knowing that I'm going to have to play against a force that can do things that they get because they're a smaller force? Or do I hold back and maybe just commit 1,000 points to it, knowing that I've got 2,000 in reserve? And if I win with those, I win that even footing, I bring that 1,000 back into my 3,000. If I lose it, I've got another 2 goes before you've got nothing else at the end of it. And that'd be kind of at least my perspective on what I would do from a balanced perspective. I appreciate that does mean that there's more rules to be written up and more ideas to kind of pull forward. But it's a similar kind of idea. I know they've got some catch-up mechanics and things like that in AOS. I've not looked into all of them, but I know they've got they have things for if you're on the back foot, if you're the person with the smaller force, you get a benefit, and it's actually dependent on how vast the gulf is between that point. The smaller force that you have compared to the other person, you're going to get a bigger benefit because you're on the back foot in terms of points, but you get a benefit in the other regard.
Yeah. I think, personally, when you're thinking sort of narrative campaign style, the force should serve the narrative. If the narrative makes sense for you to have equal footing, then you should have equal footing. But if the narrative doesn't make sense to have equal footing, I think when you're thinking of narrative campaigns, the story should always come before, everything, generally.
Okay. I'm going to propose an idea for asymmetric points. Okay. And that is where, if you have an asymmetric mission, because this will come up in part 3, where I'm going to introduce something else. If you had an asymmetric mission, or an asymmetric set of points, and you're going into a mission, my suggestion would be that the person who has the least amount of points, to represent the fact that, one, they're a smaller, more mobile force, get to either completely design the terrain, because they are picking the field of battle. Depending, obviously, how conscientious you are about the people playing the game, whether they're going to... Sadly, even in narrative, people are going to try and cheat a little bit. You could either have a system where, depending on how things go, the person with least points has a greater proportion of the board to set up the terrain, maybe. Or you might have a system, a bit like how we play, because obviously the board's at my location. I design the board, but then the person with the least amount of points picks the deployment. So they get to decide who is going where.
Yeah.
So they get to the table, they get to the battlefield first, and they set up their battle line. Okay, that's part one. Part two is that because the person with the smaller number of points is at a disadvantage, they get to pick the mission. Because they are deciding what their objective is in this one-sided game. So they could attempt to do an ambush mission with their smaller force. They could attempt a stronghold defense, so they could set up defenses. They could choose to just do some kind of assassination mission where their only objective is to kill one unit in the entire army. They set the tone of the battle.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, the player who has the more points is still going to have a significant advantage. But I think if the person with the least amount of points is able to influence what game is being played, yes, they're going to be at a disadvantage, but they are still going to have a game to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably the most important bit, is to make sure that whoever's playing the game can still play the game.
Yeah, and I think by doing this idea of they basically pick the deployment and the mission, you can then obviously pick a mission that suits the army you've got. So you have a chance, despite the fact you're going up such against insurmountable odds, you have a chance of doing something. You will probably lose that army, but you will still achieve an objective.
Yeah.
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 So that's my idea for that one. I think that would potentially unlock the potential for asymmetric missions.
Yeah, I'm just musing in terms of like that aspect of, kind of essentially a bit of kind of battlefield control. I'm just trying to think of like if there are any kind of rules that I've read about or systems I've heard about where they have that kind of, you kind of choose what rules they had in place in terms of kind of like how terrain maybe gets set up, just to make sure that you don't end up, as you said, in that situation where actually, sorry, just a brief like tangent of thoughts kind of around that idea. Is it could be that it's not always the same, like you choose. And actually, and you'll appreciate this one, Jamie, you could go, okay, you go, I'm going to pick the mission, or I'm going to pick the deployment zone, or if it's a case of that terrain aspect, you have the map, but then you add to that your own terrain, and then you could have faction-specific terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely an option.
The some kind of, I'm thinking your knights could have essentially a castle, maybe some kind of like mobile castle system for it. If you were doing, if we were, somebody who's doing mids, they could have like biomass that they like grown around it, or delightfully going back to our idea of orcs, they've thrown together a fucking wall wall of scrap that they're going to use or something like that.
Yeah, I think that would probably play into picking the missions, because I'm kind of thinking of this as in terms of the missions that I would design as well.
Yeah.
So obviously I would design missions that kind of are designed around the concept of you must leave this area of the map clear. The player who's defending gets to place X number of whatever to make a structure or whatever.
Yeah.
I also think like it could encourage more interesting styles of battles, because it's like, okay, you dedicate a much smaller force that's a much higher risk mission, but potentially like for the assassination of a key character, it's like high risk, high reward type play.
I'm going to paint you a picture of what I envision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm envisioning House Dracaran. Let's just 1,000 points of knights, a few lancers and a few Questoris, marching across a desert trying to outfox the mighty forces of the Dark Mechanicum and their Night Lord allies. They are 3,000 points strong, and they're trying to trap the Drukharen. Drukharen turns around, realises they cannot outmaneuver them and must fight. The battlefields are drawn, Drukharen picks the field. They pick a nice ravine-style mission area. The flanks are blocked off, they can't be outflanked. It's a straight gun line. The Dark Mechanicus brings their massive, dark Imperator Knight, or Titan, to the field. Drukharen's goal, destroy the Titan. And you just have this and the Drukharen forms in a massive wedge formation, plows straight down the centre of the table, smashing through the Dark Mechanicum lines, going straight for that Titan and brings it down. All the knights then die in the next 2 turns, but they've brought down the big Titan.
Mm-hmm.
That is really valuable in the campaign because that Titan was worth more than my entire army.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot.
And
Yeah,
I've just written a narrative for a game that hasn't even happened.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Yeah. The other thing, you know what this would work with you a little bit as well from that perspective. You know, there's asymmetrical deployment zones.
Mm.
You know, you could have that one where they're, you know, the you deploy all around whilst the people are in the middle. Like you've got the drop on them.
Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking like ambush missions would be great for this.
Yeah.
Or it could be that, you know, you do the mission is around like a defensive position, and you pick something where you can basically like start in that defensive position and get yourself set up and just hold that line whilst, you know, you essentially set it up so that the enemy is in a worse position to try and get to that defensive point that you're holding.
And the idea, obviously, if you're the underdog in this mission, you decide what that mission is based on the composition of your army. So if I was doing it with like my knights, do I want to do a defensive position? Probably not, because I need the mobility.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was, say, playing at the Solar Auxilia and I've got loads of artillery or something, well, I probably want a defensive position to make use of. Whereas my Drukharen knights would probably prefer an ambush mission where they're going to try and ambush with these big clunky knights. Don't know how that works, but, you know.
They're just sneaking them round. They're moving very, very quietly.
Yeah, you pick the mission based on the composition of your army.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. But if you would like that concept, and my concept for how to end a campaign, essentially, I think it's time to introduce you to the main feature of this episode, which is a new campaign system that I've kind of created. Like I said, I think it's unique. I think it's something that I've come up with. Someone else has probably already done it. I don't know. If you've done it already, fine, cool, whatever. I don't care.
It's yours. You're not bitter about it. It's fine.
It is what it is. I'm sure someone else has come up with this idea in isolation. But if you hear it here first, great. Now that we've discussed all of the ideas for how I would like to make a map-based campaign work, I'd like to introduce you to a brand new map-based campaign idea, which came from a very strange place of inspiration and does share some similarities to video gaming, which is also why I brought up video gaming quite a lot today. And also is why I've entitled this campaign system the Total War campaign format. Now, if you know Creative Assembly's Total War series, you might have some idea where I might be going with this.
I do. I have not played enough of that game. I'm thinking I need to go back onto it. I'm terrible at it. I love it, but I'm terrible at it.
I love the Total War series. Have done since I was very young.
I'd like to be better. I'm not good.
It was one of the first major games I got into, Total War. medieval Total War.
My first one was Rome.
Yeah, I missed Rome. But I played a lot of medieval.
I've played a lot of medieval.
Oh, I love it. I might go back and play it, actually, even as ancient. But anyway, so the core concept of this campaign format is that every player who is involved in the campaign obviously picks their faction or armies, whatever amalgamation of forces they have, and you all get a set number of points worth of armies, or a macro scale number of points. Okay, so let's say, for example, there was 3 of us playing. I've got my Dracaran combination of armies. You've got your Dark Angels. Joe's got his Dark Mechanicus.
Yep.
We will each be given 10,000 points to use to create a list, and you will actually create a 10,000 point list effectively of units that you can use. Okay. However, you must divvy those armies up into any number of armies you want, potentially with a minimum maximum, and create a set of armies to play on the campaign map. Those armies are set in stone. Those are your armies. Well, I say set in stone. They could potentially merge later on in the game, but the units that are destroyed in those armies are permanently gone from the campaign.
Cool.
Okay.
Quick one on that. Sorry to interject, just as a question for clarification. If hold on, let me get the right word. So, because obviously in Legions you have the detachments that then have a number of bases.
Yep.
Is that is it clear a detachment before it's permanently deleted, or is it every base that is lost is a permanent loss?
I would suggest, and this is coming onto what would be later on, I think, in the conversation, but
sorry,
I would suggest that there would be some kind of system where the entire detachment must be destroyed for the detachment to be lost, so that if you manage to get a few off the table, we could safely kind of assume that maybe they are able to recover after the battle.
Yeah, they recover their injured and bring them back. Yeah. Although I do love the idea of a bunch of guard picking up the pieces after the Vulcan heavy bolters on the Titans rinsed the squad and left one 5-man team alive. Well, to be fair, they're guard. They just come out the woodwork. Garden orcs. Once a planet's got them, they've got them forever.
And that will play into a concept later on. So we'll come back to that one.
Sorry, yeah,
but yes, no worries. So essentially, you would just get this limit, this super size number that you would then use to create a series of armies that you can then use. Now, what I might suggest, obviously, is because not everyone is like me and has 10,000 points plus of painted armies, you might create armies based on the models you have. So we might say that, okay, you have a total army size of 10,000, but the maximum size of one of your divisions, whatever you might want to call them, legions, the maximum size is the maximum size of the player who has the least number of models. Or whatever number you pick. So you might say, right, cool. The maximum size a division of your army can be is 3,000 points, but they can be as low as 500 if you want. Okay, so that means that the players who don't have quite as many models as me can still have a 10,000 point army, but they just essentially have 3 lots of the same army, kind of.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're lucky enough to have many, many more points than that, obviously you can make all sorts of different wacky creations as well. This system does kind of work better with the more models you have, but I think most of us who get quite into this game tend to have quite a lot of points of models eventually. So I don't think that will put anyone off. So that's how that would begin. You'd get your armies, you'd build your lists, and what I'd obviously suggest is you don't. I wouldn't suggest you literally make a 10,000 point list. I would say you make a series of army lists that equal 10,000 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in case someone gets confused there, because it will happen. And what I'd also suggest is that you would obviously have a campaign map, and you would place your armies on the campaign map, but secretly hide what army is which.
Mm-hmm.
And you only reveal that after the first time they come into contact with an opposing force.
So you'd almost do like a number kind of system, but that stays face down until it gets flipped over.
Yeah.
A bit like those, not quite the Gene Stealer cult tokens, but
Similar concept.
Similar thing.
Yeah, so you'd have a set of tokens that represent your armies, and when you flip them over, that will tell you how many points is in there or which army it equates to. And obviously, as the campaign goes on, every army eventually gets tagged. You then know the composition of your opponent.
Yeah.
So in those early stages, you can do some really cool things, like I'm going to send an army off this way, and you're going to think, oh god, is that going to be a 3,000 point list or a 500 point list? How much do I send to counter it?
Oh, I like that.
And you might, obviously, you might be able to kind of guess how many points are in every army, because you might go, well, if he's got 10 armies, then he's only got 1,000 point armies. If he's only got 4, then there could be 3 lots of 3 and 1,000, or some weird mix.
But you're still always sort of guessing at the force weight of like each bit, yeah.
And you could have like rewards or things like that from a campaign that lets you maybe like scout what an army is or things like that.
Yeah, we could have some interesting mechanics where you could do some little things. I was thinking, obviously, depending on how complicated you want to go, you could add in some cool like army abilities, like campaign macro abilities, which is maybe unique ways of regaining troops.
My immediate thought of like one that I feel like is the most Alpha Legion one that there could be.
Oh, you probably had the exact same thought I had, but go on.
So you, as the person who is in, like, you get it as like a campaign reward. Maybe it's like you pay points for it or something like that. And because obviously from our perspective, as the people who are playing, we're meant to be like the generals, like the commanders in chief who are in charge of this. But you, as the opponent, or as the person who does this, says, I'm going to spend these points and I'm going to swap the position of 2 of your armies. And you don't get to flip them over when you swap them, but also the person who has them does not get to flip them back over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just essentially just you've done miscommunication. You've intercepted the lines, and actually it was the other army that was sent there. So then they only find out what that army is when they flip it over.
Yeah, that's quite cool. Not what I was thinking. I was thinking like as a campaign, a way to regenerate units. So I think it would be quite fun if there was some way of regenerating units, but not to the point where you can just regenerate whole armies. One thing I was thinking, if for like an Alpha Legion one, you could have a system where after an engagement, if you win, you can flip an opposing Astartes player's models to your team.
They were always on my side.
I just thought that'd be quite funny. Like, oh yeah, I won that battle, and now your Sakarans are mine.
Yeah, that's fully your vibe as well to it. You'd just be like, damn it.
You could do a similar thing with the orcs.
I blew up your vehicles, now they're mine.
Oh my god.
You know, I think it kind of works for every army, right?
You just reflavor it each time.
You could
do. You could do. What would I do for? So, Dark Angels. Similar vibe to Alpha Legion, but it's risen. They're fallen that you got back.
Yeah, I think we'd have to workshop some ideas, and we don't necessarily need to go with these things. It'd be kind of kind of quite cool, but it might just be adding a little bit more complexity we don't want.
The admech or the dark mech get a whole load of new services at the end of it.
Yeah, there could be an interest. You could introduce some kind of mechanics where you can steal people's units quite comfortably based on losses and victories and stuff.
Definitely have fun with it.
So yeah, there are quite a few things we could do with it, but that is the broad principle of the campaign. Really, is that you just have a set number of resources, and you just play this sort of cat and mouse game on the campaign map until eventually you clash.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, based on what we were talking about earlier, that will mean that there will be occasions where you will go up against an opponent who has more points than you.
Yeah.
There will be a point in the campaign where, let's say, player number 1 has lost 75% of their armies, and they might as well just merge their armies together and have a last stand.
Yeah. And you've got to try and get that other army across the board to give them reinforcements before it all goes to hell. So
that's my broad concept. It will probably need some tweaking and some testing, but that is essentially it. Just adding a little bit of extra risk reward to a campaign map game.
Yeah, it's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah,
and with that in mind, I think that's something that will change the way you play the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now the concept of retreating is an actual thing you might want to do in a game. So if you get, say, 3 turns into a mission, realise you're going to lose, we could have a mechanic where you can literally run your units off the table to retreat on the campaign map, so that you don't lose the army.
Yeah.
Suddenly your changes to the retreat, the fallback mechanic is like, maybe it'd be better if they did run back.
I mean, fallback is literally we've don't want to fight anymore. Whereas I'm talking about like an ordered retreat. So your general puts the call out, right, we're losing this battle, fall back, get out of there, regroup at rally point alpha or whatever. So it'll be quite interesting because you'll have, like for example, I mean, you can see the chaos of the board behind me here. Now, this board was a game where my faction was absolutely decimated by the end of round 2.
Wow.
In the campaign, if we were doing this campaign, I've got a Titan, which you can probably see just here. I wouldn't want to lose that asset in a campaign. So at this point, on turn 3, I'd be like, right, cool. Guess what I'm doing? I'm marching off the table.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to push on and try and do something, I'm going to cut my losses. I'm going to get out.
Yeah.
And this also might encourage you as well. So we were talking, as you were mentioning earlier, about whether it's model-to-model detachments that count, of whether units are destroyed. If we made it so that it has to be the entire detachment, you then have a more tactical decision of, right, okay, half that detachment is gone. I need to get them off the table so I can make use of them again. So it kind of incentivizes you to play more like you're a real commander of real forces.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's good.
Now, obviously, units that retreat through morale, there could be a mechanic where maybe they have to do another morale test at the end of the game, or they, disband.
They run away.
Potentially. Or we could just say, they fall back and they rally. It depends how we feel about it. So there's a thing you can potentially do there.
Is there like a scope for doing a chase down mission?
Don't see why not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't see why not at all.
Like you could absolutely and again that could almost be a bit of like to a certain degree, like the reverse of the advantage on one side kind of thing. the advantage you have when we were saying about like the uneven points. You could always be like the reverse of that kind of where if you're doing a chase down, where the side that is chasing down has the advantage.
Yeah,
but maybe that's a case of actually that you get the chase down, but maybe it's you can only do it with like a reduced force or something like that. Like
yeah, I think you probably would have to do something like that. Otherwise, you would just chase down every army immediately afterwards, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Maybe only like particularly fast units can get the chase down. Like you can send some like bikers off or something like that.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, there's definitely something you can do with that. Maybe it's a case of, I'm just trying to think of an mission now where you can the defender starts on this side of the table and has one turn to move across. Then the attackers, fast attack units, whatever detachment styles, come on turn 2 and have to chase them up and try and destroy as many as possible before they get off the edges of the board.
Yeah. Just thinking like Total War wise, like Total War medieval, like send the cavalry down to take out writing units and things.
Yeah, I definitely think we could potentially do something with that.
Yeah,
that's where my mind was going in a similar vein, kind of. There's having the cav come up behind and cause the problems.
Yeah, you'd have to you'd limit it to certain units being able to do it. Okay, cool. Well, that does bring us nicely onto the whole concept then of additional mechanics that we could consider. So, veterancy or experience for successful victories in the campaign. We could have some kind of system whereby armies that consistently achieve victory might get a small bonus somehow. Or maybe we limit that to characters, maybe. Or do some kind of combination of the both.
I think definitely. I like systems where like stuff gets like experience and they can kind of improve over time. There's one that actually I really like from I'm speaking from a perspective of not having played it in or like necessarily know how this would translate, but just as an idea. In Mordheim, you've got your division kind of between what would be your heroes and your standard kind of chaff, your standard kind of units things, and the heroes like level up individually. They are all tracked on an individual level, whereas your groups are tracked as a group. So, say for example, you're doing Skaven, you might have your group of your group of clan rats, and it's like a squad. It's a group of 5. They all act individually, but it's a group of 5. But when they level up, they hit certain thresholds, and you basically roll on a table to see what's improved about them. And there is a chance every time they roll that they get elevated to the point where they then become a hero. Only one of them, and then the rest get like they keep their level, but like one of them gets to become like a new hero, and then they get to roll and become, and they get like the hero benefits that come from it. And that's a really cool like little thing where like veterancy can potentially like lead to them becoming like a hero style unit. Also, what I particularly enjoy about that one from Mordheim is on the orc team. If at any point a grot, or no, it'd be a goblin, wouldn't it?
It'd be goblin. Yeah.
Gets this particular trait, they immediately die because the orcs think he's too uppity, and they're just like, no, goblin can't be a hero. I think it's described as they immediately eat the goblin because they're like, he's getting too full of himself.
Yeah, I think we could do something interesting. So yeah, I think having some kind of veterancy or experience system would be fun.
Yeah.
And to kind of couple with that, it's not on. Is it? Oh yeah, it is there. Yeah. We could have some kind of system whereby you do accumulate some reinforcements every sort of round of a campaign, but we'd probably make it quite small. So, for example, so long as you hold control of your home territory, your base, your starting location, one army from your faction gains an extra, or gains, say, 100 points that they can use to either return a unit or gain a unit of similar, or just add a new unit to their force up to the maximum.
I was going to say, and like a way to kind of play around that, and not to be like adding more complexity to it, but it could be an interesting one of like if another person is on the campaign, say it's on a map, like a grid-based map, that if they like cut off that home base, you then can't get those reinforcements.
Yeah, that could be a nice simple way of doing supply lines, isn't it?
Yeah. Like it's just like
if an opposing force intersects your direct line to your home base, then your supplies are cut off. You can't gain more troops.
And then you kind of incentivize, like, they've got to commit to it, but also then you're then incentivized to go back and commit the other way.
That then adds that layer of, like, tactical sort of mission choosing of, like, where you go on the map.
Yeah, and that's also be a really good case of, well, that's why I've got a little 500-point unit, 500-point army. I'm going to sneak that round and cut your supplies off.
Yeah.
I like that. That's really cool, actually. That incentivizes you to have some smaller armies, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually not adding enough complexity for me to worry about. I think that's quite nice and simple, actually. Okay, cool. Now, the other thing is, obviously, we could think about potentially some macro scale buffs. So I'm thinking stuff like, again, go back to video games again, Dawn of War. I know that, I think it was in Soulstorm, you could take over like a massive planetary gun, and that would give you like an ability to nuke a unit.
I mean, always that's always the best thing.
Yes. On the campaign map, you can have a set of areas that provide you with a unique bonus that you can deploy in games, whether that's limited or every game is, depending on whatever you decide. But that could then obviously give you some more points of interest for control on a campaign map, which I think is quite key to making it interesting.
I think that incentivizes kind of going to different locations, and then it also leads to fun potentials of terrain and stuff. Like if you've got to fight over a big old planetary kind of gun, that's going to be a fun like bit of terrain to build up.
Yeah,
it can inspire some creative designs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I'm also thinking that it'd be quite cool if there was like some smaller unoccupied bases and stuff like that you could go and take over, and you could use that as like a point for reinforcements as well. Maybe everyone starts with one base and there's another 3 bases on the map, and if you get those, you get more reinforcements. But even if you add all of them, there's so much you can do.
Yeah, and that's very much like in keeping with the Dawn of War kind of vibe as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of my concept.
No, it's a very cool concept, and I'm fully on board.
Cool. Well,
yeah,
it's something that I would certainly like to run, and it's something I'd love to try and run on the channel at some point once we get to the point of doing some battle reports. That does require armies, gentlemen. This is your call to action.
It's getting there. Not this week, but it's getting there.
But obviously, those of you who are watching this, if this is something you are interested in, please do let us know if that is something you'd like to see us try out this Total War campaign idea. And also, if someone does know of someone who's already come up with this idea, let us know in the comments, just so that I can be humbled.
I thought you were going to be like, don't tell us, I don't want to know.
No, I want to know, because if someone else came up with the idea first, they deserve the credit.
Yes. Silence them.
Tell us exactly who it was, where they live, all of these.
Alfarius, go to this address. So.
No, like I very much relish the idea. I think a campaign system for this would be very, very cool.
Yeah,
I sure.
That sounds very fun.
I shall have to get to work on doing some cool graphics at some point, won't I?
Yes.
Oh, you can have fun. Oh my god! Sorry, just my brain. It just immediately went to not entirely like the like a campaign thing, but just like you saying about graphics. Do you remember? I can't remember what the show was called, but it was one where they had like a big. It was like Total War, but it was done as a TV show where they had to do tactics and the.
Oh, yep. Me and Gaz literally put it on YouTube the other day.
I can't remember. I'm glad you know what I mean.
Time Commanders.
Time Commanders. Time Commanders. That was just like a moment, just like shot through the brain and be like, I know it's not entirely relevant to what this is, but it just came through, and I was like, I need to go and find it. I'm glad it's on YouTube. I need to go and watch it now.
I love that show so much.
Oh my god, I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in so long.
Welcome to the Mead Hall Tangent.
I was gonna try and make a pun out meander and Mead for a second there, and I'm just like, nah. In the Mead Hall, we stagger to the point.
Yeah, a bit like the Drunken Orcs.
And it comes full circle. We're back around.
We've done really well of segueing everything today. Everything's kind of blended together beautifully.
This is where we rewatch it and it goes, this did not segue in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, I'm editing me. Good luck. Oh dear. Well, I think that is quite a bit of interesting stuff there to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is sort of a final section to this, and I think we'll keep this one rather brief because I don't think obviously we've got too much to say in terms of experience because we've not tried any of this yet.
Yeah.
But if we were, or I say if we, because we will probably run this because, well, I invented it. It's my show. We'll probably do it. But if we were not part of this team, or if we were to take this idea outside of the team, do you think this is something that would work in a local gaming store or a club or something like that?
I think it definitely could. Depends sort of how sort of rated, like the regularity of it is and things. But definitely that sort of format definitely could.
I think just if it was going to be done, because obviously with like a gaming club or like a local gaming store or something like that where they're running games, I would probably be more tempted to go with you are limited to just like an army. Maybe it kind of, you take the same idea of, okay, you have a 10,000 point list, but each game you go into, you can only take like a certain amount, and you are one big force kind of moving around trying to do things rather than the split up. I think the splitting up of lots of different forces is great for us because there's only 4 of us. Like, that's quite easy to track on a map, and you're not going to end up in a situation where, imagine that you may be doing like a game of it or a day of it, and somebody's in this kind of like position where they're wanting to be attacked by like multiple people at the same time. That's going to be either a lot of people kind of waiting around for that person to become free, or like I don't think that would work in necessarily the same way. Maybe you did like the store itself, or like a group that were kind of like who were in charge of it could be like additional roving armies that were around. But I would say from like a bigger, like from an individual player perspective, maybe that you just have one army that you draw from over the course of that campaign. Just
or to branch off from that, if you wanted to do sort of the multiple armies, multiple players thing, almost have it like a PvE style, where like, okay, the people who run the game store maybe have one force that is split up similarly to how one force would be split up with us, and then multiple people have multiple different forces spread up, but the same kind of, or like allied factions.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my two cents on it. To use an American term. So, personally, as much as obviously I like this idea, it's something that I've come up with, I don't necessarily think it will work in a hobby store. But I think there is one occasion or one circumstance where it could work.
Mm-hmm.
And that is either a weekender or a single day campaign event, where you just have a bunch of people gather together, each person brings their army, and you just play a series of battles up until a point where you just sort of coalesce your armies together into one big fight finale in a big event hall. I think this system would work quite well as like a one-shot weekender campaign that just lasts a whole day or a whole weekend.
Yeah.
Organised properly, probably having obviously a game master or a campaign master to sort of run it all, which would probably be the host of the event, obviously. But in terms of like a week-to-week thing, I think it would struggle. In a local game group, it probably could be done if you have a local game group that is a bit like us, very committed, and you are there every week, and you've got a host that essentially will run the campaign for you.
Yeah.
But as in a more casual setting, I think it would probably have to be like an event rather than an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
So, if that is the case, then I think if you want to do narrative gaming in your local store, map campaigns, and outside of the version I've come up with, or even just a generic one, I don't think they're well suited to stores or hobby shops or gaming clubs, just because of the commitment required.
Yeah.
But I think short-running branching narratives or linear campaigns are good, and they work quite well. Because you're only kind of asking people to commit to a few weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's probably where I would say your best bet is. That's not to say you can't try this, obviously. I mean, if you want to go for it, go for it. But I envision it being difficult.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I could definitely see it being a difficult one.
Yeah.
But if you're a small group like us, playing at home, in your basement, in your living room, in the loft, I think you'll be fine. And obviously you can add your own rules as well. These are just ideas, which we haven't tried yet. We don't know if they'll work. I'm pretty confident they probably will. But as someone who's made quite a lot of rules over the years, I'm reasonably confident that they would work.
We will just have to try it, and then we can feedback.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can try it on the channel and have a live progressive campaign.
Oh my gosh.
Which could be very cool.
Very cool.
It does mean I've got to learn a lot about doing graphics. Which
think of the graphics. Think of how good they'd look.
I've been getting better. But
yes, I mean the way that everything is looking on the intro things and the outro bits, looking great.
Yeah. But it's a whole nother ball game.
It's a whole nother ball game.
So I think obviously the final point to this section then is obviously to basically share for the community, you guys at home watching us ramble about random rules that we've made up, to comment down below and tell us your ideas for campaigns, what your take is on the Total War system. Do you think it will work? Would you be engaged to watch that come to life? Would you like to try and apply it to 40k? Or Age of Sigmar, Old World, or whatever game system you like? and are there any additions that you might conceivably come up with? Because, we'll steal them and use them.
No, we will give credit where credit is due.
Yeah,
silence.
we will credit the commenter that says it, but we will steal them and use them in the show.
It's not stealing then. It's using with permission.
Fair use.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, John, the teacher, is telling me I've got to reference, and it's fine.
Yes, you have to reference this thing that you reference.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed that you didn't make that joke, considering you're a teacher still.
Look, I said I was warm, and very warm, very, very warm. It does not lead to the brain working at maximum capacity right now.
You need to get that superconducting in.
Yeah, definitely. Or an aircon unit, which I feel like is more affordable than a superconductor.
Okay, so I think that is probably it for the main discussion today. So I think it's probably time to wrap up or round up on the round table.
Head over there.
See you in just a moment.
See you there.
And welcome back to the round table, where we round up everything that we've already spoken about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tie together a nice little bow.
Indeed. So, obviously, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to cut that for a second because I'm just going to put my notes up in front of me so I can read them. Okay. So, obviously, today we have sort of gone through the sort of various campaigns that can be found across Warhammer media, and various forms of playing campaigns in a narrative world of wargaming. So we've spoken about linear campaigns, branching campaigns, crusade systems. We briefly touched on the concept of escalation, which is just where you start from a point and grow. We've also introduced the concept of the total war system, which obviously is a very obviously stolen title. But not a stolen system, as far as I know. Which obviously is a map-based campaign system with a few extra additions to give a more tactical, almost realistic approach to the way the game is played. And then sort of around that, as we built up to that as well, we sort of spoke about how we could mitigate some issues with the campaign systems as well, such as asymmetric games. And we also discussed ways that we might be able to sort of finish a campaign in a nice way to prevent the sort of drop in interest that can occur as campaigns sort of snowball when one side is winning too much. Which I think is quite important. I think, tooting my own horn a little bit, I came up with quite an elegant solution, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
it gives you a good end point to go with, and some good
and everyone loves that cinematic
towards the end.
moment. Story.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite you both to provide one thing you'd like to see in a narrative Legions Imperialis campaign.
Okay, you get asked with one thing, and I'm going to go
With the thing that I think I said at the start was like the in my opinion, the most important thing in anything that's going to be a campaign-based system is consequences for actions, whether they are good actions or bad actions. If you win a game, it should be good. If you lose a game, it should be bad. There should be consequences for things that you have done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I, as someone who is perpetually losing at Warhammer, am looking forward to a lot of last sad cinematic moments.
Shouldn't sell yourself short like that. Thank you very much. appreciate the joke.
Well, I personally am very much looking forward to the creativity that is going to come out of these kind of narrative campaigns. Because one thing I do genuinely love is making terrain, hence why I've done so much of it. And I think there's a lot of scope for these narratives inspiring cool-looking boards.
Yeah.
And new creations and new ideas of things that I probably wouldn't have thought of until suddenly I've put a random thing on the map of, some kind of super-sized manufacturing facility. I'm like, what would that look like on the board?
Yeah.
I love the creative side of things. I probably won't enjoy painting it, but I'll like making it. So that's kind of what I would be looking forward to, the creative outlet.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, I'd like to ask you, the audience, once again, to please comment down below everything I've already asked for. But also, I'd like to ask you a very specific set of questions. And that would be, would you take part in something like our limited resource campaign idea, where every single unit matters, where every action has a consequence? The Total War system. How would you manage your forces if you were to do it? How would you break it up? How would you play around the idea of having your own special character rules and stuff like that? And how would you bring your story to life on the tabletop and across your games? So, if you've got any ideas, please let us know. We'd love to read them. Right. The last thing to obviously remind everybody, as we do every single week, is please send us some images so that we can start filling Tankard Talk with all your stuff.
Take the pressure off us.
I don't know if the pressure's the only thing that keeps... Well, no, that's like, that's not the only thing that keeps you painting, but it helps.
It does. No, it's more of a case, obviously, we play with our own models all the time, and at some point in time, once things move forward, which hopefully sooner rather than later, obviously moving has changed plans a little bit, we will be showing off our models quite regularly on the channel. So it's not like they're not going to get their daylight. So we'd like to see what you guys are doing and what's inspiring you to play the game.
Also, we just really like seeing other models. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like most of my social media feed is filled with other people's models, and it never gets boring. So please, I'd love to see more.
Yeah, and honestly, seeing someone else's stuff inspires me to make more stuff. And we'd like to share that experience with as many people as possible.
Yeah, especially if you're an Orcs player, we'd love to see vehicle conversions.
Yes, because then we can take inspiration from those designs. Joe, you're obsessed with silencing people.
You've really gone into this. I'm not sure how I feel about this change of character for you.
Yes, that's an arc, I guess.
All I'm going to say is, John, you did this when you made him go to the dark side.
I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Been corrupted by the Mechanicus.
Can't talk if you're a saboteur.
Oh dear! I never thought Joe would be the dark one.
Who'd have thought it?
The last person I would expect.
It's always the quiet ones, you know.
It is.
I'm supposed to be the villain.
No, you're the morally ambiguous one. That's why you're the Alpha Legions player.
That is true. That is very true. Okay, so anyway, if you enjoy what we do, please do obviously go like, subscribe, and share what we do here with your friends, with your community. Beat that algorithm and share by word of mouth if you can. If not, subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff. It will all help. We do. If you'd like to see more of what we get up to, you can obviously check us out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch. I will obviously state at the moment, due to life events, those platforms are a little bit quieter at the moment, but there is plenty on there for you to have a look at from previous things that we have done if you've not already seen them. And I can assure you that they will be going live again in the near future. Probably in about a month's time as of when this is released. Okay, but do go and check them out anyway. It would be very much appreciated. And those are obviously platforms you can contact us from, so that we can share your creations in Tankard Talks. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching and listening to us ramble on repeatedly. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I have been Jay, your host here at Mead Gaming, and I've been joined by
John?
And Joe.
Thank you very much once again. Hopefully we will see you next time in the Mead Hall. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Ta-ta.